Hello, good morning. This is Dr. Iftikhar Ahmed Ansari, Department of Political Science, Aligarh Muslim University, Aligarh. Friends, today I will be talking about one of the theories of democracy. Now, every idea must have a theory, and theories are the one. When something is theorized, it is then the concept becomes a reality, and what salient features or what characteristics should be there to follow to reach a certain kind of a society, that is what a theory theorizes. And it also clarifies the misconceptions regarding that concept. So theory is one of the important aspect of an idea. So here we are going to talk about and discuss one of the theories of democracy, that is a classical liberal theory. Now, in the present world, democracy is a popular and very fascinating slogan. It's considered one of the highest ideal, one of the most controversial concept, which has a different meaning for different people. Everyone fancies to be called themselves democratic, but then the concept need to be clarified because there are many misinterpretations. It is generally said that the Second World War was fought between the democratic and despotic forces, and democratic forces wanted to make the world safer for democracy. So the victory of the democratic forces could show the superiority of democratic theory and practice. So the issue of merit and demerits of democracy virtually became dead after the Second World War, because democracy was victorious. So there was no question of having any demerit on that idea. So everyone accepted that. But the question is, what is democracy? Now, in our age, democracy has been misused by undemocratic rulers in such a way that it has lost its shape. So dictatorship has brought into the world a kind of a system which was undemocratic in nature. So dictatorships have been abolished through democratic processes, and many dictators have defined democracy in their own words to suit their convenience. The concept of stable democracy is one such concept that has virtually no meaning. Now, this democracy has become a mere slogan and a confused theory. And in this regard, writer Russell, he writes that the most successful democratic politicians are those who succeed in abolishing democracy and becoming dictators. So the truth of this statement converts the truth of the democracy into an untruth. So regarding theories of democracies, there is a debate among the liberals themselves, between the liberals and Marxists. So among the liberals, there are mainly three theories: the classical liberal theory that we are discussing today, and elitist theory, and pluralist. Now, all these interpreted democracy in their own different manner. So the greatest difficulty with the democratic theory is that democracy is understood more as a form of government and less as a social, political and moral ideal. So before we look into the various liberal theories, let's take up this theory and talk about what the classical liberal theory is all about. Now, about 2400 years ago, in 422 BC, the Greek philosopher Solon, he defined democracy as that shall be democratic, which shall be of people, by people and for the people. Now, in modern period, this definition was repeated by an American president, Lincoln, but this definition is the literal meaning of the word democracy and does not bring out the connotation of the concept of democracy. However, a layman understands democracy as a political system which is characterized by adult franchise, periodic elections, at least two political parties, independent judiciary, representative and responsive government, strong public opinion, free press, and above all, a constitution which incorporates some fundamental rights. But this is purely a political meaning of democracy. Democracy is not merely a political concept, it is much broader concept having a broader meaning. So we are talking here in meaning, a broader meaning, and then we'll take up the narrow meaning. So the broader meaning of democracy is normative in nature. It sets certain norms, certain standards. So democracy is an ideal, it's an end in itself rather than a mean to achieve or means to achieve an end. So here in this regard, Tawney writes that democracy is unstable as a political system as long as it remains a political system and nothing more. So instead of being, as it should be, not only a form of government, but a type of society and a manner of life which is in harmony with that type. So the broader meaning needs to be understood in the context of ideal, that is ideal of a democratic man, his behavior, ideal of a way of life, then ideal of a democratic society, then democratic economic system, democratic social system, then ideal of a democratic unity and democratic morality. So let's take up very first the ideal democratic way of life. Now, ideal democratic man and his way of life is generally believed to be the man who believes in liberty, equality and fraternity. The one who tries to win others through persuasion, discussion and mutual exchange of views rather than through coercion, any kind of threat or display of force. Now, the one who respects the dignity and personality of others, who does not exploit or dominate others or misbehave with them. So, the one who is not timid, who is ever ready to fight against injustice, dictatorship and repression. So, a man who fights against repression, exploitation and injustice and never bows before all these in a truly manly fashion is the one who is democratic man. So, this democratic man and having a life of democracy, he doesn't believe in any kind of repression or any kind of injustice. So, a man is ready to fight repression, exploitation, injustice and never bows before others or especially the injustice. So, he is tolerant by nature, but he is not tolerant of injustice and repression. So, tolerant means regards for other person's opinion and emotions. So, like for that man's own, so a selfish opportunist person can never be the ideal democratic man. Democratic thinking is based on high democratic ideals like liberty, equality, fraternity. So, democratic behavior is based on cooperation and life which is based on democratic thinking and behavior is called a democratic way of life. So, when we see an ideal democratic society into which this idea of democracy can really foster and flourish, we find it means a society where each man can develop his personality, where there is equality of opportunity, where proper social conditions for self-fulfillment are present, where exploitation of man by man is absent. A few people does not enjoy all the powers in the society, but it is shared by others as well, and political power should have a legitimate basis. So, a society with scarcity, with division in classes, with a rampant class struggle, with unreasonable inequalities cannot be a democratic society. And similarly, when we talk about democratic economic system, it means an economic system in which there are economic equalities, that is absence of economic exploitation, in which the object of production is not the profit of the few, but the common good of all is the purpose for which economic cooperations are undertaken, in which the ownership of means of production is not owned by just few, and no one should be compelled to sell himself or herself for economic necessities, and workers rather than the capitalist, they are the one who are the owners of economic capital, and there is a minimum economic need for everyone which is satisfied, and in brief it means a society in which there is no exploitation. Similarly, when we talk about ideal democratic unity, that democratic unity means unity in diversity, that is diversity in unity. So, every social and political theory aims at the establishment of the unity and harmony in society. But in democratic society, this unity is achieved with differences, and differences of religion, caste, color, culture and languages. However, the burning question here is whether there can be unity and harmony in society along with the private property. So, liberalism maintains that in spite of classes and class conflict, equilibrium in society can be maintained through state action, whereas the Marxism, on the contrary, maintains that without the abolition of private property and classes, democratic unity and morality, a harmonious society cannot take a definite shape. So, when we talk about democratic morality, now morality is based on high ideals like equality, liberty, rights and fraternity. Now, its central point is human values and welfare of human beings. So man is end rather than the means, and man who is central to democratic morality is not a selfish and egoistic man, but a social man. So the personal morality and the essence of individual is sociality. That is, he tries to socialize, and democratic morality is concerned with human values of a social man. Thus, the broader sense, democracy does not mean merely a political system, rather it associates with socio-economic and political ideals. So, democratic political system is a means for realization of these social, economic and moral ideals. Now, on the other hand, if you talk about its narrow meaning, so democracy is here in narrowest sense is concerned with government and the state. Now, in ancient period, Greek philosophers understood democracy as a political system. But during the modern period, especially during the 17th and 18th century, when this classical liberal democratic theory was founded and it flourished, we find that during that period, it was primarily concerned with the ideals. Now, during the present century, especially after the Second World War, the American behavioralism and its supporters, they have emphasized mainly the political aspect of democracy and disassociated it from the ideals and values of democracy. Now, different definitions of democracy have been given from time to time. So, some of the important definitions, they encompass within itself the narrow meaning of democracy. Now, Seeley, one of the scholars, says democracy is a government in which everyone has a share. And then Hall, he says democracy is that form of political organization in which public opinion has a control. And the famous Lincoln definition, democracy is government of the people, for the people and by the people. And similarly, we find that Sartori, he says a democratic political system is the one that makes government responsive and accountable, and its effectiveness depends first and foremost on the efficiency and skill of the leadership. Similarly, Lipset, he talks about democracy, he says, may be defined as a political system which supplies regular constitutional opportunities for changing the governing officials and a social mechanism which permits the largest possible part of the population to influence major decisions by choosing among contenders for political office. Now, democracy is merely a mechanism for choosing and authorizing governments, or in some way getting laws and political decisions made. Now, on the basis of this narrow meaning, if we try to find out what are the main features of a democratic political system, that is the liberal system, we find the supremacy of will of the people, that is the first. Secondly, it is a representative government which is duly elected by people. Third, that it has periodic and free elections, and these elections are adult franchise, and people universally participate above the age limit set, that is 18 or 21, wherever. Then the government which is formed in response to those elections are responsible governments, and these governments are limited and constitutional in nature. They are bounded by the constitutional propriety and values and the conditions given in that. The aim of the government remains always the service and social welfare, and political power, as people's trust, is in the hands of government, and popular participation of the people in the decision-making process is what is invited. And this government of democratic liberal class is the one which safeguards the rights of the people and which is the primary duty of the government. And it also has independent judiciary to adjudicate the conflicts among the people, and at least there is the presence of two political parties and pressure groups. Thus, what we find that a clarification of the meaning of both broader and a narrow sense of democracy. So, in order to see the development of this concept, various liberal theories will now be examined, and let's see what the liberal theory is based on these values that we have just now discussed, broader or narrow. So, the liberal theory has undergone changes during the past 4 centuries with a change in time and circumstances. So, liberalism has given support to democratic ideals and ideas from the very beginning. Now, it has faith in the worth of individual and in his natural rights. So, classical liberal democratic ideals emerged during the 17th century and were prominent till the beginning of the present century. But during the present century, especially the 21st century, the classical theory has been criticized, and many liberal writers have supported the elitist and pluralist theories of democracy. And all these theorists, the classical or elitist or pluralist, are liberal theories of democracy because their basic philosophical assumptions are almost similar. So, the whole political philosophy of John Locke, who was the main propounder of this classical liberal theory, it lays down that the classical theory of democracy, it premises and it brings into center the individual and his rationality and his understanding and his actions. So, Locke's ideas were clarified and it was given a practical shape by thinkers and politicians during 18th and 19th century. So, the main principles of classical liberal theory of democracy, which are available either clearly or vaguely in the political theory of Locke, are something on the lines where he says political power should be vested in the parliament rather than in the king, first. And secondly, he says the legitimate basis of political power is social contract or a consent of the people, and then political power is in the form of a trust to the people, of the people in the hands of the rulers, and individuals have certain inalienable fundamental rights which cannot be taken away by the state. Now, this classical liberal theory, it employed the theory of Locke that the basis of consent is the majority opinion, and the law of the state should not be against the natural law. So, the representative government was employed in the theory of Locke, and the government should be limited and constitutional. Further, he emphasizes that a liberal democratic theory believes in a separation of power, that was a separation between executive, legislature and judiciary. So, political power is not handed over to the government forever, and if the government any times manipulates and plays with the trust of the people, then the revolution is also justified. So, liberal theory, all in all, it centralizes human and his concerns, and the political power is only a means to serve the interest of the individual. So, the salient features, if you talk about of this theory, it believes that man is a political animal, he is rational, he is capable of deciding about political matters, and all men are equal in their dignity and in their standing. So, the government should be governed by the people. Open participation of the general masses in the political process is necessary for the development of human capacity, and one of the important methods of people's participation in politics is elections, through which a reasonable government can be established which is responsive to the people's need. So, the government should be based on majority principle, and the will of the people is a sound basis of that representativeness of the people, which derives its power from the political power of the people, and work in close cooperation with the people. Political power is the trust of the people in the hands of this government. So, the object of the government is to serve the common good, and representativeness to facilitate the multidimensional development of man. So, the government formed thus is responsible to the people, and people must have a vigilant control over the government, and the government should be limited and constitutional. So, it is the duty of the government to protect the rights of the people, and the government must take care of education so that the people may become able to guard their liberties and also their rights. So, the government must inform the people about the political decisions, and the people must have the right of free expression of opinion, and public opinion should be given due regard by the government. Now, when we try to evaluate this theory on the basis of its salient features and characteristics and what its broader and narrow meaning is, we find this theory emphasizes the moral aspect of democracy and gives due importance to democratic humanism. Now, but this theory has been attacked on various grounds during the past 50-60 years. The main grounds of the attack are something on the line where the classical theory is alleged to be based on assumption that there is a specific a common good of the society. Now, whichever person knows and which can be served by democratic government, that common good is what is in reality is something which is difficult to determine. So, what some people understand by common good may be altogether different from what others understand by it. Secondly, the classical theory believes in the political equality of people in general, but political practice in the class divided Western society makes it quite obvious that it is not true. In every society, there is an elite which enjoys political power, and democracy is not a system in which everyone has an equal share in political power. So, the classical theory is based on an assumption that the elected government reflects the will of the people. But in reality, that is not the case. Rather, the government itself manufactures the will of the people through vast ideological apparatus that it has at its command. Then we also find the classical theory believes in the rationality of man and maintains that man's political behavior is rational. Now, with this view of man, the classical theory emphasizes increasing participation of the people in political process, but the contemporary critics of the classical theory maintain that open participation of the people in politics, it converts democracy into a mobocracy. Because people being irrational in their political behavior, they soon fall prey to the demagogues and unscrupulous politicians who in turn establish their dictatorship by misusing the popular mandate. And further on, this classical theory does not give proper consideration to the need of stability or equilibrium of the political system. It emphasizes consent, emphasizes discussion, debates and consultations, whereas the times have shown and the critics have emphasized that the consensus is more important than the consent, and mass democracy is a mass in a mass society unable to satisfy the needs of all the individuals needs general consensus among different contending groups. So, the classical theory gives the right to the people to overthrow the government which does not fulfill the aspirations of the people. And the classical theory is unrealistic as well, as its main concepts are beyond operational definitions, because its assumptions about man and society are quite unrealistic. In short, classical democratic theory is held to be unrealistic, first because it employs conceptions of natural man and operations of the society which are utopian in nature. Secondly, because it does not provide adequate operational definitions of its key concepts, and the classical theory lays greater emphasis on democratic values than on democratic mechanisms. It is concerned with ought rather than what is. So, obviously, it is quite forgetful of the realities of political life, and behavioral political scientists, they attack the theory on empirical basis, because according to them, facts are more important for political scientists than values, and some of them even maintain that study of politics should be value free. That was the pure behavioralism movement. Then the classical theory takes a simplistic view of the complex political procedures and decision making in politics. So, the highly technical and complex process of policy making is oversimplified and misunderstood by these classical theorists. So, the complex political processes, it is said by the critics in the modern democracies, are beyond the mental approach of a layman. So, this theory undermines the importance of the ruling elite and leaders in democracy. It is generally believed that democracy is impossible without leadership or competition of elites. Now, further on, we find in evaluating this theory that this theory overlooks the economic structure and class division of society and maintains that democratic processes themselves could adequately adjust the differences of various interests through peaceful, rational, give and take parties and pressure groups and the free press. Now, it does not see any contradiction between the democratic political system and the capitalist economic system. Now, the assumption that liberal democracy and the welfare and the regulatory state will moderate and smooth out the conflict of class interests is badly founded, and it relied on the goodwill of the democratic state or cooperative intelligence, which is a misnomer. So, this aspect of classical theory is attacked by Marxists, and McPherson has also emphasized this dilemma of the classical theory of democracy. So, despite many practical difficulties, the classical theory of democracy is, in conclusion, is found to be important because it is based on democratic humanism, And it may be a poor theory of democratic machinery of government, but it is founded on very rich and though idealistic, it develops hope. It understands democracy as a value, a way of life, a means to the end of individuals' self-development. Its logic is that of self-government rather than that of the best government. So its only difficulty is that it is unable to see the incompatibility of democracy and capitalism. Its only problem is that it's a liberal theory of the capitalist class, and political theory of capitalist class cannot ensure the free development of all the citizens in our times. So it's impracticable because of its liberal ethos, and because of its impracticability, it has been subjected to some seething attacks by contemporary liberal supporters of elitist theory. And because of this liberal ethos, it has been attacked by even Marxists. So however, the theory is not dead, and its fast emerging concept of participatory democracy based on values, which is the classical theory of liberal democracy, so dearly upheld, is a revolt against the people's apathy and alienation in the contemporary liberal democratic societies. So with that, I come to the end of my presentation. Thank you.